Welcome to Take the Upgrade podcast, Halie. I'm so excited to have you here. We are newfound Instagram friends, I guess you could say. We have a lot of things in common, the way we think and approach health. And I'm really excited to have this conversation today about holistic ways that we can think about as women taking care of ourselves. And it is at the time of this recording, at the time of the airing, it will be Breast Awareness Month. And so I wanted to really have this conversation so that we can be empowered and not just awareness, but prevention. So I'd love it if you would tell us a little bit about your background and why you are passionate about this subject, particularly because I know you have a personal story related to it.
Yeah, absolutely. So I am a chiropractor, and I'm also an integrative health practitioner, as are you, and
Yes.
I have my master's in nutrition. So it's definitely safe to say that root cause health has always been, or is what I do, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of like my background. That's what I love. And when I was going through my chiropractic training, I really was super passionate about nutrition and hormones, because during this time I was transitioning off the birth control pill and I was having my own hormone struggles. And so that's kind of really where my passion sparked. And that's really kind of where my practice and clinical expertise has kind of led me. And in terms of hormone health, that really kind of also went into my mom's journey with breast cancer. She was diagnosed 2 years ago. Yeah, 2 years ago in September. So like right before Breast Cancer Awareness Month in October. And unfortunately, she passed away last December. And so throughout like our journey with her diagnosis, with her going through conventional treatment, but also doing more like allopathic and Eastern or more holistic style stuff, I really had learned a lot. And like, even just within the last year, when we found out that her cancer had spread and things started to get like a lot more real, I learned so many other things that I wish that I had known when she was originally diagnosed. And so that's something that I'm really, really passionate about, obviously, because I have, such a connection with it, but also because of just the scary statistics and what I'm seeing, and just even hormonal imbalance in general. I think like 1 in 3 women are going to have like some sort of like hormonal imbalance. And unfortunately, these hormonal imbalances can manifest, as worst case scenario, as hormonally driven cancers like uterine, cervical, and breast cancers. And we just unfortunately live in such a toxic world compared to what we used to, and how that really plays into like not only, worst case scenario things as cancer, but how that interplays with our hormones and how that impacts fertility, which I know that you have a struggle with or had a struggle with. And so I kind of try to come at this place of like, okay, what are all very similar root cause things to so many of these different things? And now with it being October when this airs, I try to take every October and really educate on my platform of things that I've learned in terms of root cause for cancer, especially because, we weren't really given a lot. Like, my mom was always a thin person. We ate very healthy.
Yeah.
So she wasn't overweight. We didn't eat a standard American diet. She was not a smoker, not a drinker. Like, those are all kind of like, typical classic symptoms. And like, well, I don't know. It just must be bad luck. And as I'm learning, it's not really just bad luck. I mean, my mom never sweat, so she did not have open detox pathways. And although she was healthy, there were still so many other things that we could have looked at in terms of toxic exposure and detox pathways and how that manifests as disease and stress and all these different like Lyme and co-infections and parasites and metabolic health, and really all how that plays into disease, which I'm sure we'll kind of chat on today. But those are definitely areas that I'm just extremely passionate about, how helping people optimize, because I don't want to just live in terms of disease prevention. I want to live in optimal health. And I think that's what we all should be striving for.
Definitely. And it's easy when this time of year comes around. I mean, we want to wear our pink and support the awareness of it, right? Like, there's nothing wrong with that, but it's like, let's take it a step further, and even one step further, right? It's not just about prevention. It's about like, how can we live in our best health? I mean, as a Christian, I truly think that that's what we were meant to do here on earth, is to be our best so that we can serve in our best capacity. And so that's why I love to help women, especially is primarily who I work with, and you as well, I believe, just because, I mean, I am a woman, right? I can relate in that way. And we do love to serve. It's one of our gifts, I think, as women. But I think sometimes we can put ourselves on the back burner, and a lot of times that's when these things start to pile up in our health. And so I think that's a unique thing that we can speak into as women is, we hear the self-care, and I think sometimes that can get a little skewed. So let's just jump right into some things that it would be good to be aware of. You've already kind of mentioned some of these, but let's dig into some of them so that our listeners can get a better idea of kind of what you're talking about when you say all of these different areas that you can look at that really play a part in what would be the end result of something like a disease or cancer.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd say one of the biggest ones, and even pertaining to what's going on with the virus or any virus for that matter, is metabolic health. And so what I mean by that is like how your body is able to burn fat or carbs as a fuel source, and really having that ability to switch between both. Whereas we live in a society where we snack and we eat all the time, and we don't have that ability to burn our fat for fuel or burn dietary fat for fuel and go back and forth in between the two. And we're going on these blood sugar roller coasters all the time, which what that's doing is insulin's a growth factor. And when we're constantly stimulating insulin, it's a really perfect storm for things to grow. And whether that's, more benign things like uterine fibroids or, cystic and fibrous breasts, or that's something like cancer, on more of a grand scheme, or even things as benign as acne. Insulin is a really big driver for things like those. And those are things that I work on people a lot. And so if you can do one thing, metabolic health is crucial. And how can we make ourselves more metabolically healthy? I think one is balancing our meals in terms of adequate portions of protein, healthy fat, starchy or non-starchy veggies and carbs. So having that healthy balance so that we have enough protein and fat to keep us satisfied, keep our blood sugar stable, adding in all of those non-starchy veggies for all of those nutrients, and then whatever starchy carb that we're having that, works for our diet, making sure that it's in good proportion so that it's not sending us on these blood sugar roller coasters throughout the day. And an easy way that people can do this is I always tell people, like, whatever snacks you typically have in the day, push those out to a meal. So either your lunch or eat those things at breakfast, like eat a bigger meal. Limit snacks so that we're limiting blood sugar spikes. And that's a huge way to do it. Focus on protein, carb or fat, healthy carbs that do well for your body, that's not sending you on these cravings. Like if you just eat something and then 2 hours later you're starving, you're missing something is missing there. A really great study, actually, I forget what university did this, but they took women and they found that kind of the golden hour in terms of overnight fasting was about 13 hours in terms of minimizing significantly breast cancer reoccurrence. And so 13 hours is kind of where I like to sit, and where I think that most people kind of should sit. And it's mainly overnight. If you stop eating dinner at 6 or 7, you can eat again, the next day between like 7 and 9, depending on when you stop. Sometimes I go longer, depending. But I mean, that's easy. I mean, most people, easier said than done. I mean, most people eat all the time. And so kind of reining that back in, but that's a really easy ask, is that 13 to 14 hours, mainly overnight, that can, it's free. It's easy for the most part. You just have to be diligent about it. And the research on it is really, really promising. And fasting in general, like, I think that we just are designed to do it. We're designed to fuel ourselves, obviously, but we also are designed, and our genes are meant to kind of go through. And that's a huge way we detox and, get rid of those cancerous or cells that we don't need or we don't want in the body. And most of the time, when I'm working with people, they're stopping eating at like 9 at night, and then they pick right back up at 5, 6 in the morning. So they're not allowing their body to go through that natural detox process. So that's huge. Metabolic health is incredibly important, no matter what disease we're talking about, no matter what virus or bacteria or like aspect of health. That's huge.
Let me say one thing about that. I think sometimes when we hear metabolic health, it seems really scientific.
It does. It does.
And then there's a lot that goes into it, but it can literally, it's really not that scientific. And we also hear, it doesn't have to be, I should say. And we also hear blood sugar management. I've definitely learned a lot more about this, especially since I took the integrative health practitioner, and I understood all of that better, but I definitely thought that was something for people that were diabetic, that I didn't need to worry about that.
Right.
And so once I knew better, I did better. And it made a big difference in how full I felt and how I went through my day. And again, I fast for about 12 to 14 hours. It just depends. Minimum 12 though.
Minimum 12.
And,
Yep.
yeah. And I could just tell a really big difference in my energy levels, in my satiation. Like I just felt full at meals. I didn't want to snack anymore. And I used to snack all the time.
Same.
Like really, I just felt like I needed to have something. It was a lot of it was habit, but it's just the way that you train your body. So if you're training your body the other way, it's going to be a lot more stronger and more flexible. So I think that's one to me that is fairly easy. Like you said, to just be more aware of when you stop and start eating, just start there. And then, and it's free.
Literally free, literally free. It's so important. And that's a great way that we can help, bring down fasting glucose. We can bring down fasting insulin literally just by fasting overnight, mainly overnight, which is amazing.
And one more thing, sorry, don't mean to keep interrupting you, but I feel like these are interesting points because what you said about insulin, it being a growth factor. And, what do we do as women, right? I mean, we're like, why can't we lose weight? Right. That's a big thing, especially as we age maybe, and our hormones aren't quite as resilient. And there's all those things that come with aging. And I think we dread that and just tend to think, oh, we're just going to put on weight as we age. But these are things that you can do, right? Just simply fasting overnight is a really big deal when it comes to having a healthy weight, I think.
Oh, totally. And I think I see a lot of people struggle with that. And the weight loss industry is like, you need to eat 5 to 6 times a day. I've never looked and felt worse.
Yeah.
Hormonal, physique wise. I mean, it works for some people and I think it works for some time, but like eventually it's going to get to a point where it's not going to work anymore, because who can just think about meals? Who can think about 6 meals during the day? I mean, my life revolved around food. Like you were saying with your snacking, like that's all I thought about. Right. And so, especially for weight loss, getting your metabolism in that healthy place where it's, you're not reliant on constant intake can really make a huge impact.
Yep. I agree.
Absolutely. So I'd say a second part, like, cause I was referring to like us living in a very toxic world, is detox pathways. And most people, we hear detox and like, oh, not another like skinny tea or like detox gimmick. And like, that's not by any means what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Like our body detoxes on a daily basis, 365 every single day, every single minute. Like our liver processes our blood and filters it every 3 minutes. So like our body's working. And when I say detox, I don't always mean liver. I mean, liver is a huge thing that we focus on, and your liver's on your right side, right underneath your ribs, but we've got our skin, you've got your, so skin, lungs, our bowels. So like bowels and urine. So that's a huge way that we're getting rid of things. Our breath and our lungs. So like your nasal cavity and your lungs, like breathing out things is a huge way that we get rid of things. So, that's huge in terms of like, are we supporting all of those, which most people are not, whether you've got acne or you've got PMS, you've got breast tenderness, you've got heavy bleeding. Those are like really common symptoms that like your liver and like these detox pathways need some love. If you're constipated, if you have diarrhea, it could go either way. Like you want to make sure those drainage pathways are open. If you've got swelling in your extremities, because that fluid buildup is just, that needs movement. And if there's not movement and if things can't get out, it's going to be stagnant. And when you think of like, if you think of stagnancy, think of like a really beautiful, like fresh water stream where things are moving and like you could drink the water potentially if you had to. And then think of like a gross pond that's got like the film on the top. Like that's what's happening when we're not moving things where they need to go, and things can stay up. And like, think of that pond, like think of all the bacteria and crap that just is able to accumulate there.
Really good picture.
Moving. You know what I mean?
Not really, but it's a good way to look at it.
Well, it's exactly what's happening in our body. When things aren't getting where they need to go, it's just a perfect storm for things to continue to grow, build up, and that's not good for anybody.
Right.
So opening up like some simple things that I like to do on a daily basis for, making sure I'm having healthy detox. I make sure I'm well hydrated, especially first thing in the morning before you reach for your coffee or whatever. Always, always, always be hydrated. I love doing dry brushing. Like before I go in the sauna or before I go in the shower, I make sure I'm sweating on a daily basis, whether that's an Epsom salt bath, activity, sauna, like making sure that I'm sweating is really, really important. I make sure that I sleep really good, because a lot of our detox really does happen in the deepest parts of our sleep. So you might be sleeping, but are you getting good restorative deep sleep? And if you're not getting good deep sleep, I would stay off your phone. because that I found blue light really significantly decreases the amount of REM and deep sleep that I get because I wear a Whoop. So I can tell, like, if we stay up binging like a Netflix show, my REM suffers. Whereas if I read a book and I'm just more like Zen, my REM is like through the roof and I feel amazing the next day. So that's just kind of like a little side piece there. But sleep is not really sexy to most people, but it's so important.
I love
so
sleep.
Important. Same. It's same.
Yeah.
It's so good.
I'm like baby grandma.
I know. And then we could do things, you know, topically, like I like putting essential oils over my liver or using essential oils like to help detox our home or to, you know, detox, you know, put it in on my liver, gallbladder, whatever. Castor oil packs are really great. So those are kind of like some free and or minimal expense things that you can do to like really support yourself. You know, then you kind of get into things more like coffee enemas and colonics, and those things are great. But you know, there's just so many things that you can do, low expense, low risk, high reward on a daily basis.
Yes, definitely. Now you didn't mention rebounding. That would go in that category too, right?
Definitely.
Well, movement in general.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, absolutely. Like anything like, so that's what's going to help like the lymphatic system is dry brushing, walking, yoga, a movement of any kind, rebounding. Yeah, that's amazing for that.
So I am definitely a person that doesn't sweat. I wouldn't say a lot. And so I wonder if we could talk just about that for just a minute, it is really important to be aware of that and to, you know, what would be some tips that you would give somebody that's like, oh, I don't sweat that much. You know, even when I work out, like I sweat, but it's not a ton. I'm not like a heavy sweater, let's say.
Yeah. And that's okay. I mean, it depends like on what you're doing. Like if you're just weight training or whatever, like it might be harder for you to get sweating, but I would say you want to get like the lymph moving. So like maybe do like an herbal tea or like do some dry brushing before an activity, like get that lymph moving. But then like, if you do struggle like to sweat in a workout or something, or I always tell people, like, if you go in like a really, really hot Epsom salt bath and you sit there long enough, you're going to start sweating. It's the same thing for a sauna. Like you get in there and you, like, if it's hot enough or when it gets hot enough, your body will kind of have like this like breakthrough where it will start sweating. But some people, it takes a while for them to get to that point. And if it does take a while for you to get to that point, it's kind of important to ask, like, am I well nourished? Am I well fed? Like, has my liver been supported? Like, is my lymphatic system supported? Because if it's not, that can kind of block things off a little bit. But sometimes it just kind of takes people like being consistent with whether it's a sauna or Epsom salt bath or whatever, like really chronically like going in and really kind of pushing themselves. And then for me, that's what I found to just be the most consistent. Like I didn't really used to sweat that much. I started consistently using an infrared sauna, and then it really kind of like the floodgates opened and I really started getting rid of stuff that I probably have been holding on to for who knows how long.
So it's kind of just like training your body, basically.
Pretty much. Yeah.
So it knows what to do. Okay. Well, I'm getting, you know, I think that it kind of seems elementary, but it makes sense. I mean, it's like we train our muscles. So
yep, absolutely.
Yeah. Great tips on that. Thank you.
Yeah, of course. Let me think. So, and then a part of detox is like minimizing what we can control, right? So they did a study and they found in 97% of breast cancer tissues that they sampled, they found parabens. And so parabens are a huge endocrine disruptor. They're going to mimic estrogen in the body. So really kind of minimizing what you can in your environment that could be estrogen or hormone mimicking in general. So
let me stop you right there, just because I want everybody to understand what this means, because I feel like we talk about it a lot, estrogen dominance and estrogen, like mimicking estrogen, but like, why is that really a problem? How would you tell somebody that maybe is like, I don't get it? Yeah.
So essentially these things, it looks like estrogen, it tastes like estrogen. So our body's like, well, kind of like looks, feels, tastes, whatever, like that analogy. And so our body's just like, oh, it just must be estrogen. So it fits into our estrogen receptors and is overburdening those cells. So then our own estrogen doesn't have a place to go. And we are just overburdened with all of this estrogen. And what I'm also finding, because I run a lot of Dutch tests, is it really affects the carcinogenic pathway of estrogen detox. So like people might not have an overload of estrogen, but they are really, really suffering with their O2 pathway or their 2-hydroxy pathway on the Dutch test. And I ask, I'm like, do you use fragrance? Do you use the Glade plugins? Do you use anything that is fake scented? And they're like, oh my God, yeah, I do. And I'm like, okay, well, we need to stop because it's
Right.
literally affecting you. And now you can see it. And I think sometimes it takes people to see it. Like people are like, I can't live without these things. I can't live without like my fake pumpkin cinnamon plug-in or candle or
Yes.
whatever. I hear you. I used to be that person where it's like anytime I was studying, I had a candle on and I needed it, and I needed my house to just be like overburdened with fragrance when people came over. I can't even walk into an aisle, or I literally hold my breath. When you kind of separate yourself from that synthetic fragrance for a hot second and your body comes back to homeostasis, your body is then repulsed at how disgusting that actually is. And it's not serving anybody.
No.
It's like, it has no aromatherapy benefits because it's messing with your own hormonal receptors.
Right.
It's just only doing damage.
It's kind of like when you eat fake sugar stuff, or when you eat processed sugar, and it's like you have to retrain your taste buds. You kind of have to retrain your smell buds.
Yeah. No, you do. And that's a really, really great point, because I used to love like all the fitness supplements that had like the artificial stuff. And I was like, I could never have that taken away from me. And now I don't think you could pay me to take it.
An easy place to start, possibly if you're like, gosh, I do use a lot of these in my home, is to just give yourself a break, like 2 weeks or like a month, and just put everything in a basket and just see how you feel after that. And then try to add it back in, try to smell those things. And I can almost guarantee you that, they're not going to smell the same. And you might even get a headache when you smell those, because that's your body saying, this is not what's normal, right? This is synthetic. It's not from nature. So that's warning signs. It's not bad that you get a headache from smelling those. It's actually that, oh, okay, your body realizes that that's not what it needs in it.
It's a protective thing, like your body's telling you. We just need to make sure we're listening to it.
Yes.
So I would say, detoxing your environment is just incredibly, incredibly important in terms of all different types of issues that could arise. And really, like you said, getting back to nature.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. I think that sometimes that does feel overwhelming, but like I said, try the little challenge. And also, if you realize after that challenge, possibly that you're like, yes, I really need to ditch all of this stuff. And you're like, I don't want to do it all at once. Just do it a little bit along, right? There's no wrong way to do it as long as you are in the right direction, moving in the right direction. And I'm one of those people that I don't like to waste things. I don't like to just throw things out, but something like that, you have to decide for yourself, but
totally
take it one thing at a time. Try to replace one thing in your house. And we didn't even talk about cleaners. We were kind of talking about the plugins, but it's really anything that is in, on, or around you that we're kind of talking about.
Yeah. So start small, because it makes a big difference.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. So this has been an excellent conversation. I love that, sometimes we tend to only think about this in one capacity. We maybe have heard about, we shouldn't have all these synthetic things in our home. And we've kind of tackled that. And then we feel like we're good, which, that's great. I mean, it is such a big step, but there are other ways to approach really being, like you said, it's your optimal health. And it really is a journey that takes years and years. But if you feel like you're on chapter 1, you just got to start. And then, right. I mean, I think that sometimes we can make it way more complicated and we never get started. Absolutely. So as we kind of wrap up, what are some last thoughts that you would give somebody, just as far as, when they hear these statistics about how common it is to have cancers and different diseases, and that makes them feel really overwhelmed. Like, what would you say to that person?
I would say control what you can. And like you had said earlier, like how we're put on this earth to, help others and do better by ourselves. Like if you can get up and do something every single day to benefit your health. And maybe today it's just, you're going to start eating more vegetables. Mm-hmm. Maybe that's what you're doing today. You're like, I'm going to add an extra serving of good food, and I'm going to really try to not eat crappy food. That's a great start. If you can literally just boil it down to like every single day, these small little action steps that you can take, mm-hmm. it becomes a lot less overwhelming. And like knowing that if you can control what you can control, but also, take each day to really improve on whatever aspect of health you feel like needs it the most. Mm-hmm. That's where I would start, because I didn't get to where I am overnight. And I've talked about that a lot. And my husband and I did a podcast and we talk about like where we were when we met and where mm-hmm. we are now. And I mean, that's a really big journey into where we are. And the things that I avoid and like the lifestyle that I live is not the lifestyle that I had when I started this journey. And I think that's really important for everybody to know, but you can start doing things today to better yourself for tomorrow and the next day and the days to come.
Definitely. I think that's such wise advice. And it kind of makes me think about a podcast that I did recently, just talking about, are you willing to go slow? Or is it easier to quit? Because sometimes, it does take a while, and it does maybe seem like, does any of this really matter? But on the other hand, like, I just feel such a sense of joy that I get to wake up every morning and just do something that, just kind of helps me be better. And that really makes me excited. Like, I love trying to find different ways that I can optimize what I have, or switch this out, or just learn more. So I think, sometimes life can get really mundane, and we get really stuck in the everyday, but to me, this makes me excited to wake up and just do these things that really make me feel great. And I think when you start feeling better, like, you just want more of that, but you just have to start somewhere.
Yeah, that's it. I mean, you literally just have to start, because once you start feeling amazing and you start seeing your body respond in ways that it never has before, why would you go back to what you were doing before? Like it just becomes a no-brainer, and you just don't even think about it because of how great you actually feel.
Yes. And we want everybody to feel great, right? I think sometimes we just get in the survival mode, but we really, I know that we both work really hard to help women thrive in their life, so they can show up better for everybody else, of course. So this has been such a great conversation. I really appreciate you being on, and I would love for you to tell the listeners how they can follow along with you and different things that you have to offer.
Sure. So I am most active on Instagram. You can follow me there at Dr. Halie Schoff. I've got a lot of stuff on my website, details on like courses and stuff that I have, one-on-one offers, all at drhalieschoff.com. I've got a podcast, which comes out every Wednesday, Alpha Health and Wellness Radio. You were on episode 62. So that was such a fun episode. I loved that one. But yeah, those are really the places that you can find and connect with me. And I'm just so happy that you asked me to be on. I'm so glad that we connected.
Yes, I agree. And I just love getting together with like-minded people and just chatting about these different things. And one more thing that I'll say is, sometimes you might think, well, gosh, I keep hearing the same thing, like different topic, sort of same things, because we've had even Jen Pike we had on, and she was talking about some of these same things. Like, that's for a reason.
Yeah, it's because they're all important.
All of this kind of fits together. And so sometimes we need to hear something, even 10 times before we're like, oh, well, maybe I really do need to think about that. So if some of these sound familiar, there's your cue.
Yeah, absolutely.
But thank you so much for being on. I really appreciated it. And this is a great conversation.
Absolutely. Absolutely.